Alright everyone, we start off today with unfortunately predictable news, another I told you so, or rather we told you so, against the Biden voters, the ones that, aren't 6 feet under anyway. That is that Biden has decided to get the United States more heavily re-involved in the civil war in Syria. So you've got $40 billion that'll go to Ukraine, you got Lend-Lease and stuff there, so you get a conflict. You certainly have more diplomatic tension with North Korea. Inviting more tension over the Taiwan issue. The other day there was a mass shooter that apparently was miffed at Taiwan and decided to kill a bunch of people. That one won't get as much airplay. It'll be forgotten like Waukesha or however it's pronounced. I have a feeling that it'll be memory hold basically now because it involves pro-communist killing a bunch of people. We're not supposed to believe that that actually happens. Probably be classed as far-right terror. Well, basically this is Chinese nationalism. Nationalism is far-right, even if it's a communist country. You'll watch, they'll pop that into the statistics, and that's how they'll measure it, by the way. They do this with certain religious groups that engage in occasional acts of violence. Because the idea is religion is inevitably right-wing for some reason. It's very, very strange how it's calculated, although it's not strange the motives for the calculation. But what's happening is that the United States had been involved in Somalia, and by the way, Trump's drawdown in Somalia didn't completely limit U.S. involvement. We were still conducting airstrikes and reconnaissance on behalf of the Somali government and certain, local groups. The Kenyans and others are involved as well in trying to get rid of pirates, and the big one is Al-Shabaab. There's something like 20,000 Al-Shabaab members. They control large parts of rural Somalia. They conduct terrorist attacks in Mogadishu, etc., etc. So Trump drew out the troops at the end of his administration. There were about 700 men in the country, U.S. forces, in this desperately embattled zone. They had been there since the 2000s, although, again, the airstrikes and so forth continue. Now Biden's saying, no, we're going to put 500 men in there again. We're going to have a direct advisory role. Now, it's very, very strange because it seems a lot like the advisory role that the United States has repeatedly established before actually entering a conflict at a larger scale. We did this in Vietnam for years, for example. We're just sending advisors in. We're helping train people and stuff and guarding a few important installations. We're not at war. Don't worry, everyone. And then 70,000 dead soldiers later, people say, whoops, yeah, it was probably a little bit of a mistake and didn't work too well. The same is true of Somalia. I would ask a pertinent question that I don't see being addressed very much, which is, has Somalia actually developed in any sense over the last more than 10 years of U.S. involvement? Has anything there gotten better? Is Al-Shabaab actually, gone or weakened significantly? Is there less bloodshed? Is there more wealth in the country? The problem with Somalia is it's largely arid. You have a huge coastal frontage right at the crux of multiple shipping lanes, which means you get piracy. Piracy can be lucrative. That feeds, by the way, into Al-Shabaab's activities. It's not like these things aren't linked. You have Islamic rebels within the country, a very weak government that effectively has trouble even controlling its capital. U.S. involvement at the level of having a few hundred men there, potentially vulnerable. Do you think that Biden is good at base security? Just look at Afghanistan for a little bit of a memory about his foreign policy chops, his military capabilities with regards to planning. What happens is you are playing a role inflaming the situation and you're not really helping to accomplish anything. Somalia's development index hasn't really risen. Somalia is one of the most desperately impoverished places in the world. It's obviously not a great idea to stand by as Al-Shabaab takes over a large coastal region already rife with piracy, because then we'll end up having to spend 100 times more on naval convoys and stuff to defend them when they go anywhere near Somalia. That part is definitely true. But the other part, I would ask, was there an uptick in problems or further destabilization when we withdrew troops under Donald Trump for the roughly year and a half that the troops weren't there? No, it doesn't seem to have made a huge difference, except that we weren't paying 500-700 however many men to sit there like sitting ducks in a technically advisory role, potentially providing a place that the terrorists can attack, a U.S. base or something. That's basically what we're doing. We're going to reinflame the situation. Al-Shabaab will still be there. The pirates will still be there. If anything, it would be better to fund the Kenyans and Ethiopians to get further involved, because they don't like Al-Shabaab either. By the way, Kenya actually has, for a third world nation, a reasonable stability, a reasonable military capability, certainly far higher than Somalia. Pay the Kenyans to do it. They're already involved anyway. So what's the problem? Why are we propping up effectively a failed government? If anything, the leftoidism that tends to reign in parts of Africa has destabilized these countries to the point where these groups can actually flourish. We, by the way, in our last major intervention in Africa, it was Libya, by the way. Clinton thought this was hilarious. We managed to take a country that did have a reasonable development, had a burgeoning fuel industry, was developed for the continent of Africa, was very developed. Libya was. It was on par with Nigeria. It was on par with Tanzania. Arguably is developing fairly well. Oftentimes this is fuel related or minerals. Unless you get blood diamond mines, then you just get exploited by De Beers and all of your wealth gets siphoned off. It was developed. And we said, no, Gaddafi won't play nice with us. Oh my God, he's trying to form a currency union that, I mean, it's not going to impact our ability to trade. It's not going to rival the U.S. dollar. Most of the African countries are pegged to that or some other currency. They're not going to peg themselves to Libya. they wouldn't want to destroy their economy even further. We went in. Gaddafi, who is admittedly not a great guy, he gets killed. It's sort of like Saddam 2.0. And then the country collapses. Now there's no functional government in Libya. There's barely a functional government in Somalia, and we've spent years and years of time there, and we haven't really made a positive impact. If you're going to say this is for counterterrorism purposes, well, again, the proof is in the pudding. You're there for 12, 13 years, and Al-Shabaab's still there. They've still got tens of thousands of fighters. They control parts of the countryside. So I guess mission not accomplished. You've failed. If you're looking at it from a pragmatic standpoint, don't even look at the ethics of it or something. You're spending an enormous amount of money and putting hundreds of American lives in jeopardy over a country that is almost impossible to stabilize because of its location, because of its climate and geography, because of the structure of its economy, and because of the anarchic coastal region being effectively run by pirates that'll work with Al-Shabaab. Sometimes they are Al-Shabaab. So thanks, Biden. Yet more warmongering. It won't save any lives. Something like 10-20% of all the people that have been killed in U.S. drone strikes there have been civilians. Don't you think this causes people, when their family is impacted, to want to join Al-Shabaab? We're not exactly winning hearts and minds with these policies. And Biden's voters were warned that if Joe Biden was elected, honk honk, of course, 81 million votes, 10 scoops of ice cream, that there would be more conflict. Well, look at Ukraine. You know, that's predicated on Biden's weakness, largely. But Putin would not have invaded if Trump was there, because Trump would actually have responded. Biden's response is effectively, at this point, nothing more than a money sponge. If giving $40 billion to Ukraine, most of that won't flow to, it's not going to go to the Ukrainian people. It's not going to go to the troops in Ukraine. It's going to get squandered, and a lot of it will end up as a kickback for members of Congress, all but one in the Senate of which voted, to attempt to force it through unilaterally, and that was Rand Paul, the only one who apparently has a sane foreign policy in mind. Hey, let's debate the bill, even in a fast manner. Let's tell the American people why we should be doing this when we're on the verge of a recession, one that's almost certain to hit, by the way. They've raised interest rates. They'll probably do it again. We're probably headed for a recession with stagflationary tendencies. Oh, let's send more Americans abroad. Fuck the U.S. border, crime and all of these other things. It's not necessary for us to guard our own border. It's not necessary for us to tackle any domestic issue that directly involves the American people. We're going to haul off and go fight Al-Shabaab some more because we've done such a great job of it so far. That's about all. Peace out.